Are you transitioning at the moment? That's how we're going to start the podcast today. Are you mid-transition, then away from software?
I feel like I'm at a crossroads of a lot of software at the minute where I'm just like, it's it's peeing me off some of the things that I use. I don't know if that's just like a standard thing. I feel like every piece of software I've used, there's always been something that really annoyed me about it, but I've put so much into it that I'm like, I'm just going to stay with you and make it work. Um, but yeah, I just use GarageBand and Zoom for podcasts, and I feel like that's such a beginner setup. So
Well, I'll take that one step further. I literally take my Zoom file and just chuck it in. That'll do. I don't edit a thing, but I like I say the unedited version, which is essentially what this is. So, welcome first of all, for the
thank
sake
you
of the
so much.
listener. I'm talking to Sky today. I need no formal introduction because we're going to treat it very casually. But I find, as a recovering perfectionist, is I used to find completion of things like that quite difficult. I'm one of these people that used to scrutinize their work. I mean, even at uni, I would finish my work 3 days in advance, and then I'd be constantly editing. And then afterwards, if I read it after it'd been marked, I'd be like, fuck, spelling error there. I shouldn't have done that. So part of my process now of getting past that, which I'm much better at, is if I constantly procrastinate about what I need to do and how perfect I need to make it, nothing gets done. So let's embrace it imperfectly, and it's good enough. I'm good enough, god damn it. Do you know that?
Yes.
For
Yes,
myself.
you are, Dan. I'm glad that you're working through that because I imagine that just keeps you stuck.
It does, and it was a little bit more than just a flippant use of the term. I think a lot of people use it as in I used to or get my mum when I was so young to laminate my books for me. I used to read my books like but for the sake of the listener, they can't see what I'm doing now, but barely opening the book because I didn't want to crack the binding in the book. And if I made a
Yeah.
spelling mistake, I was like a tear the sheet off, start again sort of person. So and we know how that teeters on into other people's worlds.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you, to start, tell me a bit more about Sky and her formative years? Like, what got you into this fitness malarkey? Where did that interest and impetus come from? Because I think we came from a similar background from it's all about the rig picks to it's not about the rig picks.
Yeah. It's actually really interesting. And I don't think many people know much about me as like a teenager or even like a 20 odd year old. I think sometimes people, and they probably do this about everybody, right? We get an assumption because we see someone that's in the health and fitness industry and assume they've always been into sport or health and fitness. But for me, it was the complete opposite. I really struggled to identify or to partake in sport at school. I felt like I had this like competitiveness that was just about me. It wasn't about me against other people. It was like if I wasn't good at something straight away, I hated it. Like I just was like, oh, I hate that. Not, oh, I hate that. I'm not good at it. I'm going to get better at it. It was just, I'm not going to do that. So when it came to like some of the sports that we did at school, if I didn't immediately feel like I was quite good at it, I would just, nah, not doing that. So then I kind of over identified as this person that was a bit of a joker and I didn't really do any of the kind of PE side. I didn't take part in sports, all my friends did. So I went down the kind of path of I'm the funny one, I'm the loud one. And I wasn't really bad at school. Me and Rick had this conversation the other day about school. He hated school. I actually enjoyed school. I found I was a really social person. I looked forward to going to school and having fun with my friends. And I always towed the line with my teachers in that I'd never really got into a lot of trouble, but I did the bare minimum because I could. It's academically, I probably could have been like a straight A-star student, but I was like, B's and C's are great. It doesn't take much effort. So I think I kind of carried that on outside of school in that I was the kind of fun, social, party, animal type person. And I kind of really went, you know, so far away from health and fitness and sport that it really then started to impact my health in other ways. So when I went to university, And I kind of just went because it was a novel thing. No one in my family had been to university. I actually didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I was like, well, kind of enjoy English language and English writing. I'll go and do that. I've got the UCAS points to get into university. It just sounds like a party, so I'll go. And I didn't enjoy it. And it was a lot of work. And I thought, you know what, this is a lot of debt to get into for something that I'm not enjoying and I'm probably not going to get the best grades at. So I ended up dropping out again to my family's. Oh my God, she's dropped out. It was like, oh yay, she's going, first person out of our family. And then it was like, oh no, she's not finished it. Um, so I think with that, I then felt a lot of, and I don't know if I fully realized it at the time, but I think I felt a lot of shame and guilt around that of like, this is just another thing that I can't do. But I'll just pretend that I'm not that interested. So then just kind of further went down the whole social party animal, life is just about YOLO, do whatever, not taking it too seriously. I ended up working abroad. And I went out to work abroad when I was like 19, 20, doing like seasons abroad, working in bars, all of that stuff. And around my 21st birthday, I ended up breaking my hip. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
How? Now I want to know how.
Yeah. So this is like the wild kind of side of it. I had felt like a bit of pain in my hip and I was kind of limping and I wasn't really sure what it was, but I didn't pay much attention to it. I thought it might just be that I've hurt it, banged it, it'll kind of ease off. But it started to get a bit worse and I needed to go to the supermarket one day. And I was living I was renting an apartment from a family there, a Greek family. And I said to the son, um, can I borrow your scooter to go to the supermarket? Because my hip's really hurting. My leg's really hurting. He was like, yeah, that's fine. So I went down the road on the scooter, and in Greece, the drains are like huge. And the front wheel kind of dipped into this drain, and it must have been my hip shattering, but I just felt this like jarring pain in my hip. And after that, I couldn't put any weight through it whatsoever. And I knew I'd done something serious. So I kind of like limped back with the scooter with no shopping. And that week I just booked a flight home. I was like, this isn't great. Like, it doesn't feel right. I don't fancy being in a hospital over here. So I went home, went to the hospital and they said, we think it's muscular, but we'll x-ray you just in case. It might be like a trapped nerve or something like that. X-rayed me. They're like, oh no, you've fully broken your hip. So like the head of your femur is snapped. And yeah, so then I became this like medical like mystery, and there's loads of doctors coming in like, how does a 21-year-old break her hip? Because it was, kind of like an old lady break. And it basically came down to the fact that my lifestyle was so poor, like my diet was so poor. I didn't exercise when I was out there. Obviously, we were drinking most nights when we finished work. And they think that I'd given myself like early onset osteopenia, osteoporosis.
Oh, wow.
Um, yeah, and I had just had really brittle bones, and then that kind of scooter incident was like the kind of thing that broke it. So that was the kind of huge turning point for me. I went home, moved back in with my parents, went through the whole surgery. It was quite a big surgery. I couldn't walk or anything for months. So then it was rehabbing that, getting to walk again. And that's when I kind of thought, I'm 21 years old. I went to uni. I don't have a degree from it. I don't have a proper job. I don't have any money like to my name. I'm back living with my parents. And now I've like really, really compromised my health in such a serious way. I probably should get my shit together a bit. So started actually exercising as part of my rehab for my hip. And then all the benefits that come with exercise, improved mental health, started to actually feel like I was achieving something. It really improved my self-esteem. And I don't think I realized until that point how much I'd kind of tied my worth to like how many people liked me and how fun I was and how much I made people laugh and how much of a clown I could be. But actually that was to the detriment of myself. So whilst kind of going through that recovery, I did like level 2, then I did my level 3, and then I started working in the fitness industry. But it was all through like a health aspect. It wasn't because I wanted to lose weight. It wasn't because I had like a performance goal. It was literally, I want to be healthier and I feel physically and mentally like a different person. And I truly believed at that time, if I could do this and change my habits and my lifestyle, I can help anyone to do that. So that's where it all started for me. And then obviously, once you're in the fitness industry, you realize that it's all about the way that you look, really. And I had a lot of people that were coming to me and saying, their main goals weren't, oh, I want to be healthier, I want to be stronger, I want to have, more brittle bones, stronger bones, or, have more muscle mass. It was, I just want to lose weight, I want to look small, I want to be skinnier. So all of that compounds, I think, and you end up getting to the point where you think, okay, well, maybe I need to look a certain way to be taken seriously. And if people want this lean physique, then I should have that. And that's what led me into bodybuilding, and then the
Mm.
the kind of journey goes on from there.
That's really fascinating to hear. Do you feel like there were, it sounds like, and like I'm not projecting what my opinion is on you, there are parallels there between the being liked, being accepted socially, being the class clown in school, and the actually to fit in with this new social structure. This is maybe what I need. Do you think there are parallels there? Where do you think that comes from?
I don't know, to be honest. I feel like as I say this to my mum and dad all the time, I feel like they did instill a lot of confidence in me as a child. Like I was very confident and outgoing, but I think because they let me, explore what I wanted to explore in terms of school and university, I feel like it left me to feel a little bit lost. And so I was always trying to attach my worth to something, not knowing where it should go. So it was like, they were happy for me to go to university, but they weren't like ecstatic. It wasn't like they'd said my whole life, you're going to go to university. I think they were happy because they thought it was what I wanted to do. So I think that's the parallel I've always had, is like feeling a bit lost, and then latching onto, well, this seems to get a good reaction, this feels good, I'm going to continue with this. The same way that when I started going into bodybuilding, lots of positive reinforcement, everybody seemed to be, really cheering me on and championing me and thinking that it was really impressive. So again, I was like, okay, this is the thing that I'm going to do. So yeah, definitely. And at my conference, that was something that I wanted to touch on, is the fact that attaching your worth or over identifying with anything is always problematic. I over identified with being a party animal and a fun person. That was problematic. Then I got into the fitness industry and over identified as being like the lean one, the disciplined one, the bodybuilder. That was problematic. So, and then after that, it was in terms of my business, like I over identified as being really, busy, always working, turning things down, needed to have a successful business. So I've kind of gone through that journey a few times over to now where I'm like, there's way more to life than one single thing that you identify as.
Yeah, I think there's always an element and an air of caution when we tie ourselves to anything, any fitness pursuit, or as you say, like that can be taken away with injury, like everything that happened to you in Greece. But also, like, because this conversation I have quite frequently is we often base what we're going to do and what our focal points based on the social reinforcement that it gets.
Yeah.
And it's really difficult to distinguish between your own inner motives and what the external motives are there, because we're always basing that on what we receive from others.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how much of us, or many of us, go through our early formative years actually with any insight into that. Because I worry about my kids. I say I
Yeah.
worry about my kids. It's like I think we're all trying to do the best job if you are a parent or thinking about becoming a parent, in that it's counterintuitive because you want them to be accepted for all their quirks and everything they're capable of, their own unique way of thinking, all of those things. But equally, you do want them to be accepted by people. You don't want them to be ostracized as not even bullied, but you don't want them to be ostracized as the weird kid or the unique kid or the kid that's quite happily colouring on their own, even if that makes them happy. So it's a really difficult line to teeter. And I wonder when we walk into the fitness industry, I mean, I think it's much better now in terms of the breadth of experience and the messages that are out there. It was just about aesthetics solely when you first got in. So almost felt like that was a rite of passage when I came in, because everyone that I respected, everyone that I looked up to, everyone that I saw professionally having their voice heard, even though bodybuilding for me was never about bodybuilding, it was body revealing. It was about putting those demons of being a bigger kid to rest, but exposed other demons with that. It was all about like social acceptance. This is what I need to do to be accepted, and this is what I need to do to be able to speak publicly. This is what I need to write articles. And there's no one telling you different until now. But yet the overriding message is still what we were exposed to.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very much the whole your body is your business card. That was the kind of thing that I found, which is really interesting again because looking at like me as a coach in that time, that was like the worst service I probably ever provided. Projecting what I was doing onto them, thinking that was gonna, it works for me, it works for you, but also just that over fixation on your body weight and your shape and how you look. It's it breeds insecurity. It doesn't breed security. People think that when you look that way, which is socially acceptable, especially in the fitness industry, that you are confident. And I wasn't confident. I was always body checking, always thinking, because again, you've attached your worth to that thing. And if that thing changes, what
Mm.
who am I then? What are people going to
Yeah.
think?
There are different trails of thought with that, isn't there? There's a certain tribe that will think making your body smaller, increasing your muscularity does enhance your body image. And whilst I agree with that up until a point, is there's evidence to suggest that that is up until a point. And what we have a tendency to do, which I just think is an innate human thing, is we're constantly moving those goalposts.
Yeah.
So the closer that you get to whatever that preconceived notion was of your body ideal in your mind, and I think, I guess an example I can think of that springs to mind is probably Hugh Jackman, the first X-Men movie, as Wolverine. But then if you look at Wolverine, the first incarnation of Wolverine, and then the most recent ones, they're very different physiques.
Yeah.
And I think almost that was my journey with it. The closer I got to original Wolverine, I was like, actually, I want to be modern day Wolverine. And then when you get close to that, is you're so blinded by your insecurities, you don't even see it anyway. And I
Yeah.
certainly found when I was in my, in air quotations, best shape, I was probably my most insecure. And I know that of other people, even
Hmm.
if they're necessarily transparent of that in the fitness industry. And they're constantly going through these perpetual cycles of photo shoot or show or prep. And you
Yeah.
just, you want to, obviously, we can't decide these things for other people because they've got to make their own realizations. But I feel like you can see and feel the pain through the screen. And you think,
Yeah,
oh, I just want
absolutely.
to huddle.
And it's I went through a year or so ago. I was going back through because this again is part of being a evidence-based practitioner is that that some things you've said in the past you don't agree with anymore. So I was kind of going through all my own posts and being like, if someone comes to my page, I'm gonna go, and they happen to go back 2 or 3 years. Is there something there that's probably not correct anymore, or something that I've changed my stance on? I'll just archive it. So I was going through and then I got back to like the bodybuilding years and just the language that I used about myself, like, calling myself, I'm like a 50 odd kilo, really, really low body
You're a
percentage
tiny human.
woman, like female, probably a size 6 or 8 in clothing. And I'm like calling myself fluffy and, you know, talking about it. It's like that time of year where I can hide under my layers of fat. And like looking now, I like exactly that. I want to shake myself and be like, what are you talking about?
Mm,
Like, honestly, but that's the kind of how you, and this is how body image works, right? You move your perception of norm, and my perception of norm was stage ready, lean body. So then when you
mm,
start to go back towards actually physiologically healthy, I'm like, oh my God, I'm fat. I'm fat as a person. So
yeah.
I do see that in other people, and it's really hard. Obviously, even my friends that have spoken to me about bodybuilding, and I want to say like, there's no way to escape how it's going to negatively impact your body image. And then I see them going through the same things and saying the same things, and I want to be like, oh no,
Mm.
please. But yeah, that is.
That fat thing's a really interesting one because that is a common phrase that people use. I feel fat. When actually I think a lot of people find it quite difficult to get to the root of what that actually means because fat isn't really a feeling. We know that, like objectively, we know that. And that, by the way, that doesn't stop from, because one of my peeves, I've got to say, is this whole you have fat, you're not fat, is often from people that have never been in a larger body. And yes, factually true, I can objectively acknowledge what you're saying is 100% correct. But as someone that does carry a bit more adiposity than anyone else, is I still feel shit about that. Like
Yeah.
you telling me just tells me that's I feel like that is a tone deaf message
Yeah.
because it doesn't detach from the emotionality behind that and what people are experiencing, whether that be I'm lonely or I'm sad, I'm, you know, frustrated at this time about my
Yeah.
appearance. And like the
Mhm.
most torturous things, they begin and end in our heads. So
Yeah.
body image is a massively perceptive thing, and we objectify ourselves through others' eyes, thinking things they're unlikely to think anyway, and make it about us. A lot of
Yeah.
the things we worry about isn't even about us.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a conversation that I have with clients a lot, is that exact thing of, I feel fat today. Like, we know that bodies don't change that much day to day. So for you to go from waking up feeling fine and then feeling fat in the evening, what has happened in that time? And it's like working backwards. Usually it starts with, oh, I weighed myself. Okay. So you weighed yourself to get what confirmation of what? What were you
Mm,
trying to find out from that? That, it wasn't what I expected. So then instantly what you see and what you perceive is different based on that. You might
mm,
wake up feeling great, but then the scales, for whatever reason, haven't changed, or they fluctuated in a way that you weren't expecting. And then you're like, oh, yeah, I'm gross. Nothing's changed. And then it goes on throughout the day. And, or exactly that, it might be that something's happened and you just feel crappy, you feel lonely. Even physical sensations of like feeling full, feeling bloated, if you've eaten differently. Like, I know I can sometimes, my head goes to that place if I'm really full and I've like enjoyed some food that I wouldn't normally eat. I'm like, oh God, I feel huge. And I'm like, no, I feel
yeah.
full. Like, I'm not huge. And that's just like the words that we say. Um,
Mm,
it's identifying, is it a physical feeling that you're going through, or is it an emotional feeling? They're all valid, but that getting to that root of what it is can help them. What do I need to do about that? And for some people, we know that losing weight will definitely help them improve their physical and mental well-being. But it's in what way. And I think Rachel Hobbs uses a really great question where she says, does weight loss feel like an act of self-care or an act of self-punishment? Because if it's self-punishment,
mm.
you don't need to work on weight loss right now. You need to work on something else before that.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of Rachel. I have something similar. I say, I mean, I often ask, is this an act of empowerment or imprisonment?
Yeah.
Like, is doing this making me feel empowered? Is it something I'm actively pursuing to make me feel better, more accomplished, whether it's from a functionality standpoint, getting fitter, stronger, faster, running around after the kids, whatever that may be? Or is it a massive imposition? And I think a lot of people, when they get to the root of it, they can distinguish the two.
Hmm.
Like, if you're eating out of a Tupperware box at a social event and you're resenting it, like regardless of what your goal might be, if you've got nothing but resentment for it and you're just pining after something and you're still feeling insecure about your body anyway, regardless of doing like a 20, 24 week diet, whatever that may be, it's probably not going to benefit you longer term. And
Hmm.
often the message I find a lot of people need to recognize is that if you work on this relationship with yourself, relationship with food, and understanding actually why you get to the root of these things, it's largely going to feed into the body changes that you want anyway, just maybe
Absolutely.
not to the extreme end. Maybe it's a compromise somewhere along the line, but it's
Yeah.
until you address those things. But the way things are marketed, especially like this time of year, which is, it's not an intentional rant or peeve of mine to go into today, but this perpetual dieting we're exposed to. And yeah, I think, okay, start of the year is a good time to build some momentum,
Hmm.
but knowing better and not doing better is something that really bothers me. And when I see people in the fitness industry that just reinforce this idea of all or nothing thinking, back on track, finish the year on a high, I can't help but come to the conclusion your motives are just about money.
Yeah.
It's about money, getting you on board, you
Yeah.
know, preying on people's insecurities because you've been long enough in the game. We've had conversations in private. We've been to the same conferences. I've known you for a long time. You are consciously choosing not to do better, which it just fills me with mistrust. And
Yeah.
I'm running out of people. Not that I need to trust them because I'm never going to buy their services
No,
anyway.
you just
But
it's disappointing when you're like, "Oh, there's someone that's sharing our values," and then they do that, and you're like, "Oh, we've given into the peer pressure of the industry."
Yeah, and then nothing changes, right? We need these massive cultural shifts for things to change. And I get it, people. Like, I get the allure, if you like. I get that people have bills to pay, but if we're all singing from the same hymn sheet, especially if we know that it's the most healthful one for people,
Yeah.
then that's got to be something collaborative. And I don't know whether is that a peeve of yours? Is that something you've seen? I've seen quite a lot of people that have gone, I guess, what I would say, like our route, more lifestyle coaching,
Yeah.
and helping people realize these deeper things that are underneath the surface. To people that have, I guess, doubled back. They've because
Yeah.
it's harder, isn't it, from a marketing standpoint, because it's a visual platform largely that everyone uses.
It's tough, and I get it, and I think people, it largely comes from their insecurity of, I don't know how to, get people to invest in this longer process. I don't know. Everybody else seems to be doing this 12-week thing, and they seem to be having loads of success and bringing a lot of money. But again, like money and what you see as success doesn't actually equate to having impact, and that's the difference. I don't do this to, yes, I've got bills to pay, but I'm not here to be able to gloat on social media about how many zeros I added onto my finance. I want to be able to say I have an impact on people in a positive way, and people are leaving my service better than when they came in. And that's because I have confidence in what I do. I have
Mm.
confidence in my values as a coach. But I was swayed early in my years, and I do totally get why people, get there where they think, well, everybody else is doing it this way. Everyone still uses transformation photos, so I'm just going to still go down that route because this is what people are asking of me. That's what they want. Okay, well, that's what they want, but that's not what they need. But actually, if you thought about it, the way that we do it offers more longevity in your business because clients stay with you longer. You're not constantly having to like re-promote and remarket and scramble for clients every 12 weeks because you've got a new batch of people that are just leaving. And they're
Mm.
leaving because most of them maybe haven't changed the way that they want to change in that 8-12 week period. So I do get it. And from working with coaches in different scenarios and having different conversations, it is always down to a lack of confidence and insecurity. And the whole like stay in your lane and do your own thing, like it's cliche, but it's so true. Like you have to be blinkered, and you have to say like, okay, does this sit right with me? Is
Mm.
this a kind of something that I can maintain long term? And
Mm.
I think that's why a lot of coaches end up coming down our route, or they just end up chasing the money, and that's again where it's problematic.
Yeah, I mean, you can only it's that old adage, isn't it? You can only sell shit once. Because I'd be interested to hear from. I keep in contact with. I'd say probably 80% of the people I've worked with in the past, whether it's like through Instagram, the odd I don't know message on their stories, or they message me or whatever it may be, and I think I'm pretty confident. I think they're in a good place, and I might get the occasional note from someone I've worked with 3 years ago about something that was quite impactful that we did. And
Yep.
that's reassuring. I think when naturally you do have wobbles in confidence when things are a bit quieter. Ella, do you know Ella, the fitness psych, Ella Whitcomb Calm?
Yes, I don't know her, but I know of her work.
We had a conversation. The phrase that we came up with is like almost the cost of congruence. So the cost of developing a business and
Yeah,
being the coach that you want to be that aligns with your values does come at a financial cost sometimes because you are fighting the regular diet culture, capitalism, and we are exposed to these messages that our impact is all about scaling or
yeah,
impact is always about earning a certain amount of money. But I think people are getting wise to that. I'd be disgusted if I saw. I would like this is a side tangent. Confidence is quiet, and I think some of the people bragging about monetary wealth or material objects that they have and things having their business a certain way allows them to like be proud of the things that you've bought. But if you have to constantly flex about it, I don't think the question is why are other people insecure about you doing that. I think the bigger question is why do you feel you need to do that. There's a difference between subtly bought this, went on this lovely holiday. People can come to their own assumptions and everything else rather than, boom, look at this. This cost me that much.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
I've never been in. It's never been a norm to be in this industry. So if we use the 10 grand a month
yeah,
example, regardless of like tax implications, which never get mentioned, funnily enough. I don't know when it has become the norm for a online coach to be on 120 grand a year when the average UK income is close to 30.
It's bonkers. Even I like will still sometimes, and you might feel the same. It might be a week where I'm just not feeling on my game, and that impacts my business then because I'm like, I'm feeling really lethargic, I'm really tired for whatever reason, there's lots going on. Um, and then I start to feel like I've not really spoken to my clients as much as I usually do, or I'll feel like they're being quiet, or whatever might be happening. Sometimes my clients go through like these phases where they're all having bad weeks at the same time, and I'm like, oh god, I'm having to coach the hell out of everybody. And then they'll have weeks where they're all like amazing, like all
Mm.
the things we've spoken about are clicking into place, and that can sometimes again make you think, oh god, am I doing enough? Could I do more? And then you go on Instagram and you see like my old kind of coach friends that have now become business mentors out of nowhere, which is another peeve of mine. But
Let's go
oh
into that one. Save that one, Sky. Save that
yeah,
one.
we've just hit
We're reverse back on that one.
so and so started with me and they were earning 6K and now they're earning 12, and I'm like, what does your service look like? I mean, I understand the people that have a team of coaches and they're earning more, but one person, you can only do so much. So, how much have you automated this personalized service? How much is it actually you responding? I just think, what have you got to be selling at what level
It's a
to
product, isn't it? I think it's that whole. And
service, is it?
I'm not really caught up on titles and whatnot, but I do feel quite protective of coaching. Like I
Yeah,
feel that is a collaborative effort that is aligned with the person that you're working with. You know their bloody surname. You know maybe what they've got going at home. You know how old they are, what they do for a job. All these kind of personal things is a personal service. So you have to be personable. You have to get to know the person in front of you. So just from a practicality standpoint, I know how much I give to my coaching, my service, and even like you think about friends group, like how much you can give over to yourself and manage a life yourself. Like, realistically speaking, how are you doing that with apparently 100 one-to-ones?
exactly.
Apart from, and I think this is like going to go on my peeve again here, is coaching is such an interchangeably used term. What a lot of people are doing, they're delivering a product essentially.
Yes.
Here
Yeah.
is a generic-ish plan, which I might have tweaked a little bit based on your injury history because you flagged it, not because I've asked.
Yeah.
And here is a macro target for you. So a
Yeah.
bandwidth, which you can stick between consistency. I've probably underballed it anyway on the assumption that you're going to go over it, and wow, that fixes everything. But
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
look at repeat business, it baffles me why people go through these 10, 12 week, whatever it may be, and they're on their fifth, sixth transformation now. That should be a red flag that maybe that service isn't what you need if you can't maintain any level of the results you've aspired to kind of achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I sometimes think, oh my God, is that the norm? Like when I came into coaching, I came from well, I was a coach and then I went into a employed role within Pure Gym, and I was in like a business mentoring role that we were trying out, and then COVID hit, and our roles got kind of ended and we were put back into managing gyms. I just didn't want to do that. So I went back into being self employed. And my only goal going back to self employed was to match my paid income of like 30 odd grand. And that to me was like, oh my God, am I going to be able to do this? What the hell? And then everyone's popping up. So I think, if there are coaches listening to this, the biggest thing I would say is that you have to define what success is to you financially and in terms of what you stand for within your business, because it's really easy to get wrapped up into what is apparently the norm. That's not normal, and it's not providing a service. It's definitely not, unless you have a team of coaches working and you're all singing from the same hymn sheet and you're all getting to know your individual pockets of clients. There is no way that one person can work with 100 people.
Not to any quality level anyway.
Oh, exactly.
I
Yeah.
mean,
So it
there
does.
are there are definitely places for it, and I think I'm more at ease when people know what they're getting. So if you know you're buying a product, if you're getting irregular touch points, that's fine. Like and that might be the model that works best for you, but don't I guess like overinflate the little details about how much you care and how much you get to know people and the
Yeah.
one-to-one time that you put in,
I
because it's not feasible.
My favourite one is 24/7 contact. What? You're a vampire. Do you
Yeah.
take days off? Because honestly, I'm very clear with my clients. Like, there's a cut-off point on an evening where you're not going to get a reply until the next working day.
Mm,
And if that is on a Friday, probably not going to be till Monday, unless I choose to work on a
mm,
weekend for whatever reason. But this 24/7 contact thing, I just think, again, like stuff like that is just lies. It's just out.
mm.
If you actually think about it logically, that doesn't make sense.
I just think it's such a confusing space for coaches and also consumers, because consumers don't really know what they're going to get, because the expectation is they do. Yeah, the expectation is like I've started working with a lady a couple of months ago, and I didn't delve into who or how much exactly, but we got onto the conversation is I paid so much more for so far less,
Yeah,
because it has become the norm, because the expectation is I get a food plan or some guidance around that bare minimum,
yeah,
and I get a few touch points during the month, and it's
yeah,
when that's been established as a norm, it's difficult to then convince people actually maybe you need a little bit more one-to-one care. But the thing that, sorry, I know I went off on a tangent there. The thing you were talking about, the mentors, I know personally, and I was thinking about this example the other day of someone that I knew for only a handful of years ago that was at the time like 6 one-to-one clients. I'm not, that's not a slight on anyone, but like has blown up as earning quite a lot. And the biggest distinguishing thing I can see is not that they ever achieved that personally, is their biggest achievement is managing to convince other coaches that they achieved that. And that's the big thing at the moment, because it's not true. If you look at Companies House, you look at history, which we will have access to if you're in the UK, check that out. Have conversations with other peers that came up with them around that time. How are they working with people? If you've got your suspicions, you're likely to get a truer picture, I think, because there are a lot of people blagging it at the moment, just rinsing PTs and coaches out of mentoring fees, which they cannot afford, again, preying on their vulnerability and insecurity, essentially selling them the group package they used to do as transformations. Right, I'm
yeah,
just now, otherwise I'll just go on.
yeah. Well, this is yeah. We'll wrap this up in a second. But I had a lady come to me to work with me on nutrition, but she wasn't a nutrition coach herself. But she was in like a really bad place. And we went through kind of what had happened for her over the past year. And she had gone to a mentor to get support. They got her on a call. They had pressured her into signing up and putting it on her credit card. It was like £10,000. She then went through the process, and what they were basically getting her to do was exactly that, get people on calls and pressure clients to sign up, which obviously she was then like, I cannot do this. Like, this is awful. 10 grand of debt on a credit card. She hadn't told her husband. Like, she then was struggling to pay off this 10 grand because she stopped with the mentor, didn't have any clients, and like this whole thing had just spiraled. Her mum and dad ended up stepping in and offering to pay it off because her like mental health was like in the gutter. She was really, really considering quite serious things. So I'm just like, how can you feel like what you're offering is worth that much money? Like, I just don't know where we get the right to, I say we, people get the right to charge what they do, and there's a lot of talk about charging your worth, but I'm like, is that your worth though?
Yeah, yeah. What are you actually delivering for that? And that there are certainly levels to it. But also, I think about the emotional well-being of that individual, the financial security of that individual. If we're working across the well-being spectrum and bearing in mind people's physical and mental health, that is it. They're in a secure enough position to actually want to invest. And if you've got to tie people in with contracts, yearly contracts, which is another thing, is maybe you're not as confident in your service as I have an honest and candid conversation with people I work with, in that based on their goals, I'll give them a time frame. But I'll say, you're not bound to this. This is
Yeah,
how long
right.
I think for. But if at any time circumstances change, you can opt out. People need that.
Yeah, that's
And,
the same. I'm upfront. I'm not going to tie you into anything. Realistically, you have to see that this is not going to be a short fix. But I understand that circumstances may change, and in
mm,
that circumstance, as much notice as possible would be amazing. But you're not legally bound to work with me for the next year or whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
And if the care and the considerations there is, do you want to give imposed debt on someone? No matter how much you believe in your service, no matter how much I believe in my service, I would feel awful about someone having to stick that on credit card. And I've heard accounts of that as well. Is if they're in a position, and the truth of it is, in this economic climate in the UK especially, is money is a real concern for people. I'd rather signpost someone that is offering perhaps like a product that I
yes.
feel could support them, or we could have a conversation about a hybrid service of sorts. But yeah, there's so much around that.
Hmm.
I mean, based on your experiences, I say growing up in fitness, and I do think it's an evolution. How
Yeah.
do you feel like you as a person and your coaching has changed over the years? Because
Um,
you strike me as an individual that's done a lot of work on yourself, Sky.
yeah, I think my own journey with food and body image definitely has now, formulated the practice that I have and the people that I have. And, other people will say to me, you're really clear on the people that you want to work with. And I'm like, because I'm trying to help. I'm trying to be the coach that I probably would have needed 7 years ago. So understanding that makes it easy to talk to my audience because I've actually been, and I'm not saying that you have to have been where the people that you coach have been. Like we've just said, I've never lived in a large body where I have experienced weight stigma, and what weight bias and, all of that stuff, but I can still empathize with that. However, definitely my own experiences and like you said, my own, you know, work on body image and self-esteem, detaching a lot of my worth from the way that I look, from anything that is, one singular thing, not attaching it to my business, not attaching it to the way that I look, not attaching it to how many people like me. Um, that's definitely helped me to then try and get other people to focus on that. Um, and my own relationship with food. I definitely was a kind of fat loss, calories, macros kind of person. And that's how I had been coached, especially in bodybuilding. But I think when you've got a bit more skin in the game, you start to see the same problems that come up, the same barriers that people have. And you have to adapt. That is coaching. You have to have different tools and different ways of working with people. And imposing one way on my clients just wasn't working. Um, so yeah, working on myself and seeing how I needed to be coached and helped and how I needed to approach food over time has really helped with how I coach people. But also just that experience of, okay, this didn't land for this person, this didn't work, we had to change this. Here's some different methods and tools that I can start to use. And obviously education, going to conferences, all of that really helps. But I definitely think as I have matured as a person and my values have become clearer, it's developed my coaching to encourage other people to do that. So it's not just about, like you said, health is not just physical, it's not even just mental, it's emotional, it's social, it's financial, it's all of these things. And people might say, well, that's not, that's nothing to do with fitness or health, but it's like, well, that is my approach to health, is
Mm,
encouraging. I'm not telling people what to do with their lives and their money, but I'm encouraging them to reflect on how all these things are intertwined.
yeah, that's such a valuable point because I think even the flippant way people talk about mental health these days, happy clappy versions of that on social media, especially, is financial security is and financial health is part of that because it's all very well saying we've all got the same 24 hours in the day, do your workout at 9 o'clock at night instead of watching Netflix. But if someone is to the point that they're constantly worrying about paying their bills, that is going to be a concern. If you are a single mother with two under five and your choice is a punnet of blueberries for a fiver or a few ready meals, because you're not thinking about nutritional value, you're thinking about full tummies. These are real considerations for people. So
Yeah.
financial security is part of it. It's, yes, it's trauma, like as people like to say, all these other things. It's, experiences, it's PTSD, it's depression, it's all of these other things. But also, are we just pathologizing stresses and angst that people experience day to day? If you're worried about your bills or you're worried about work or you're worried about a family member, you're going through grief, you're going through all of these other things, that's going to have implications. So there's got to be an infrastructure there, I think, from a coaching perspective that supports that. You know,
Yeah.
that's boundaries, there's levels to that, there's
Yeah.
a certain amount of support you can and you can't give. But showing you care, I think, is the biggest thing. And yes, that's not as tangible as weight loss or before and after pictures, but that's truly the message that I'm always trying to convey on my social media. I know it's difficult on a visual platform, but I went through exactly the same process as you, as in photo shoot packages. They always sold out. You know,
Yeah.
I can honestly say I didn't know better at that time. Now that I do, I try to do better. And arguably, it's what makes you feel comfortable sleeping at night, I think.
Yeah,
You
definitely.
know, you grow as a person, you make those realizations, and that changes you and your approach to life. And you know, in terms of life and expectations, you're about to make quite a considerable shift. And I actually get the great pleasure and privilege of speaking to your husband to be. I can say
Oh,
that
yes, it is tonight, isn't it?
now.
Oh,
Yeah,
both of them, one day.
lucky me.
Yes. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, so I mean, we were talking about like, societal expectations and beliefs around where you should be in, you shouldn't be in life. Do you feel like I don't I don't want to suggest that it wouldn't be organic, but as in that's become easier for you and you and Rick have found your way together now because you don't feel those impositions because you have
Yeah.
found your way in life and you've
Yeah,
discovered who you are and what you align with.
absolutely. I think, so Rick, Rick's got a son, and he's no longer obviously with his son's mum. And I think he had an idea of what he wanted for his family. And when we met, I think he was very disappointed in how that had all turned out. And again, that was that pressure of like, he's grown up with that family unit that have been together since they were young. His mum and dad are still together. I haven't had that. My mum and dad split before I could even remember. So for me, it's normal to have, two families. Um, so I think we had very different ideas, but then, what we found together was that it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter what you have, what timeline you do things in, so long as you're both on the same page and what you have together is what you want. So I think we're quite lucky that we both kind of had the same, you know, wants for each other. Like, we wanted to get married, we wanted to be engaged, we want to have more children, but we don't have pressure on it.
Yeah,
We don't have like a timeline of we must be married, we must have children, we must have bought a house. Like, we're renting at the moment. We've just moved to this house, and we're not precious about it. And I think it's really good that I have before and he has before. I think felt the pressure of what life should look like, but for us, we're very strict on what do we want it to look like, and this is it. We're doing it. We're living it, and that's the most important thing.
yeah, absolutely. I think it's when you learn to turn the volume switch down on all that external noise, things become a lot clearer for you because I've been with my now wife a long time,
Mhm.
but I didn't propose until 7 years in because I was kind of done with all that. Oh, so when you're going to propose? Because
Yeah.
people are never satisfied, right? So it's when are you going to propose? Then it's when are you planning on having children? Like it's anyone's business anyway. Which,
Yep.
if by the way you've ever been tempted to ask someone, never ask anyone that question because it is
No.
none of your business. You don't know what people are going through.
Exactly.
Um,
It's the
and then
worst.
you have one, and it's like, when's the next one? And then it's like, it's constantly other people's expectations of you. And it
Yeah.
wasn't until that
Isn't it?
stopped, actually, I felt ready for that because my parents divorced each other twice.
Twice. That's
Yeah,
great.
great. That's
I mean, they
crazy.
just want to be absolutely sure about it. Let's get divorced and let's try again. No, actually, I'm definitely not.
Yeah, it's definitely had no impact on me as an adult. Definitely not. But they divorced when I was 5. Then they got back together, and because there's 9 years between my sister and I,
Yeah.
and they divorced again when she was 6. So yeah, that process was really cool twice through.
Super
But
difficult.
my
But yeah,
mum did my mum did
pressure.
the job solo, so like I won't go into the ins and outs of that. But I, in
Yeah.
my head, I was never going to get married. I didn't believe in it.
Yeah. 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 That totally impacts you.
Yeah, absolutely. And is that again that those formative years and what we're exposed to has
Mhm.
such an impact on us.
Yeah. Definitely. I do think there is a lot of pressure, but I don't know. I don't know if it's an age thing. Like, Rick's older than me. Rick's he's nearly 40 now. Yesterday he was like, "Am I 39?" And the next birthday I was like, "You are 39."
After 35, it does get like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think being in my 30s, and I spoke about this on a podcast that me and him did. I don't know if it's just me or if everybody experiences this, but I feel like in my 30s, I'd really become sure of me and what I wanted and what I wanted out of life. I think in your 20s, you're a little bit still kind of malleable and you're still taking on what everybody else wants and what everybody else thinks. I did that with university. I was engaged before as well. And again, that
Okay.
was, yeah, when I was like 24, 25, which to me, I'm like, I was still a baby. Um, but that then became a big pressure because I kind of knew that it wasn't going to be long term, but it felt like the right thing to do, and I felt like that might be the thing that fixed our relationship. And when we actually split up, I remember thinking, "Oh, thank God," because I'm not going to be divorced by 30. I actually felt like I would have been. So after that, I was like, I don't know if I'm bothered. I don't know if I'm bothered about that because it didn't feel like it was for me. It felt like it was for somebody else or for everybody else. But in my 30s, and I don't know if it's again just being in the right situation, we just had those conversations of, is that something you would like? And it wasn't, is this something you would like? It was more of a, is this something you see us doing? And I think that's the more important thing. Like,
Mm.
do we see each other living here? Do we see each other having one or two children? Do we see each other being married? It's not, oh, is that what you've always wanted? Because that can change over time. And I think before we met, Rick had resigned himself again that he wasn't going to be in another relationship. He didn't want to do that. It was too painful that time. He felt like his family had split. He was really disappointed. And then that changed. And now we do see each other having a family. So, yeah, I definitely think societal pressure can really make or break some things, but I think if your unit together is strong enough, that's all that matters.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. That's the foundation of everything. I think there's so much wisdom in that. Like, if you're, as you say, if you are a team and you both have these, and obviously the most definitive thing there, I think, is communication.
yeah,
If you have these honest, open conversations, because I think that's on a basic level with any working relationship, not even
anyway, yeah,
any relationship whatsoever, is everyone knows where they stand, and it doesn't need to be combative. It doesn't need to be argumentative. It's just, can we have these open and honest conversations now? Because there are certain compromises you just can't make, And a
mhm,
friend of mine, he won't listen to this, so I'm sure. I'm not going to name him anyway, but I remember when he first got with uh, his girlfriend back then, many, many, many years ago, and they were getting together. She was adamant she didn't want children, and he was hell bent on having children. That was always a thing. And it's a very difficult conversation as a friend when someone's in that kind of relationship, because you don't want to have those conversations. You don't want to go like, it's not really something you can compromise on, mate. Like, at some point, if you do decide you don't want children based on what she would like, is that you're probably going to resent each other at some point. And, thank goodness he made that realization further down the line. But I mean, look, there are obviously nuances and grey in between, whether you have
mhm,
difficulties and things like that. But something that is so black and white and that can't be budged on, there is no compromise on. I think that just leads to further resentments. But if you can have conversations in relationships where you're just like, this is what I want out of life. Do you want that as well? We know where we stand. We know where we can go with that.
definitely. I think a lot of, I mean, I'm oversimplifying here, but I think a lot of problems that can arise in any situation with clients, with friends, with partners, it's just a breakdown of communication. Like it generally always comes down to that miscommunication or a lack of communication, and then there's assumptions, and that is generally what happens a lot of the time. And we had this conversation the other day that we don't, and I'm not saying that we never will, we might, but we're not a arguing couple. We will disagree a lot of the time, but we will talk it out. And Rick was saying that, his dad was saying to him about when you find like the right partner, they will challenge you. And Rick always thought that that meant like someone who was difficult and, challenging like a confrontational way. And he's like, but now he understands, and I get it too. It's not that they actively seek to challenge you, it's just that the way that they view the world, the things that they say, the conversations that you have, it challenges your own thoughts and behaviors, and you start to think, you know, you think more about what you do and what you say in relation to that person because you're in relationship with them and you love them. And I think that's where it comes from, like the challenging side. So yeah, we're really great at communicating. Our communication styles are very different, but we understand that about each other. So yeah, communication is just like the basis of most successful relationships, friendships, working relationships, definitely.
Yeah. And like the most successful ones as well, I feel like a common misconception is that should be easy, that should be without challenge, when actually it's worth it. It's work. You know, it's always work. And relationships, personal relationships, friendship relationships, you are going to go through times where almost those like parallel lines of values do start shifting away, and then you come back together. And it is through those conversations, those open lines of communication, because I've never been one of these, oh, we never argue, we never disagree. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
we're sharing Instagram account. There is some going on here. We
Yeah.
never argue, we share an Instagram account and you never bicker or anything. No, no, no. Okay, I'll speak to you in a couple of years.
Yeah, 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 exactly. It's like you can disagree and you will disagree, but it's like, are you disagreeing just to have an argument? I've been in relationships where I've just I've wanted conflict for conflict's sake. Like
Yeah.
I've just wanted to, and it sounds awful, but sometimes you're in that place where you do want to hurt them a little bit. You're upset about something because you haven't communicated it. So then you find a way to, well, I'm hurting, I want you to hurt. Whereas we just don't have that. It's like, I feel this way and I want you to know so we can resolve it. Let's have a conversation. And we probably will have bigger arguments in the future, but we just that's not how we do things, and I think it's because we communicate so well. Saying that, I'll probably in a few days say to you, guess what? We just had a big row.
We're all flawed, but I think that's one of those learning curves, right? Because I'm certainly not going to give anyone relationship advice here, but ammo, like leave that shit alone.
Yeah,
You don't, once you've dealt with something, once you've spoken about it, it's dealt with.
yeah,
Don't back that stuff up and throw it in someone's face in the
yeah,
future.
yeah,
That's
for
what
sure.
I'm probably the over communicator out of the two of us. Is I will bring stuff up when it comes up. I don't stew on stuff. I probably would have done in my early 20s,
Yeah,
because we're not really brought up with those skills, those communicative skills. It's the push it down, shut up, just deal with it, it'll pass, that kind of thing. Whereas I'm not for that now. So I'd rather bring stuff up rather than let it build up, or bring stuff up that happened 3 years ago. That's just, again, the
yeah.
path to resentment. Sky, it's been an absolute joy, and I'm hugely conscious of time. If
Okay.
anyone wanted to hear a little bit more about it, I thank you for being so candid and honest, by the way, because I know you are an open book. You said you were happy to talk about everything. I know we went which way and everywhere there. If people
Yes.
want to know more about you, where should they go? What would you like people to know? What would you like to plug?
Oh, well, I spend a lot of time on Instagram, probably more than I should. So you can find me on Instagram, Sky Elizabeth Nutrition. I have my own podcast, which is our Society Nutrition podcast. That is on Spotify. It's not on anything else yet. They're the two main places where you can listen to a little bit more, especially from the nutrition side. Um, and you can join my emails via Instagram if you want a little bit more on me personally after listening to this, if you feel like you want to know more. But thank you so much for having me. It was a great
No,
conversation.
enjoy it. And a public apology for mentioning porn so many times in front of your grandparents and your parents at the conference.
It's absolutely fine. Did I tell you about what my granddad apparently said?
No, you
When we were
didn't.
I didn't know this, but apparently,
Is
I
it?
don't know,
Hang on, are you going to horrifically embarrass me now? I don't.
maybe.
I don't get
No,
embarrassed. Well, go
no, it's
for
not
it.
about you. But we were having a conversation, obviously, about body image, and we were talking about male body image, and I think it may have even been mentioned about the size of certain elements of a man, and apparently my granddad turned around and said, "That's not something I've ever had a problem with." To the whole table. Bearing in mind he's 83. His wife just ignored him, just didn't say anything, and everyone else was like, apparently my
Brilliant.
dad and Rick were just like, "Oh wow,
Well,
okay."
there's levels to it, and I'm glad he kind of did me proud. He took it. He's taking it away from me. I'm glad. I'm happy with that. Yeah.
He wasn't phased at all. Yeah.
And
Yeah. So anyway.
good for him.
Mm.
But yeah, thank you for your time again. And I'm going to wrap up there. I'm going to do the usual beg. If you do like it, please rate it, share it with people. It's the only way other people hear it, really. Thanks.
Yeah.